friends and fellow bibliophiles. Welcome back to Kat's Novel Adventures. If you are new to my channel, I'm all about adventures, and today it is a bookish adventure. I want to take you along on my Killer Corn / Readathon that kicked off my reading in June. I read about an unusual summer camp. I also read about a sleepy little town in Proof Rock where there is a slasher running loose. There's a creepy doll story I read, as well as a mysterious painting that has some dire consequences. So come along and join me on my Killer Corn / Athon adventure. It is June 1st and the first day of the Slasher Readathon. And unfortunately, I have not done really anything. However, I am going to pick up some speed tomorrow. The only thing I have actually done was crack open Welcome to Camp Nightmare. I read 2 pages so far. There are children on a bus going to Camp Night Moon. I did officially divide up my pages for the 11 days to see how many pages I would need to read of My Heart is a Chainsaw so that I can make sure that I finish this in enough time. It looks like I would need to read at least 37 pages per day. I don't think I'm going to get my pages in today. I know that doesn't sound very optimistic, but I am about to head out to attend a play in New Orleans at the Sanger Theater. My friend Shelly and her husband and my other friend Roxanne are going to see To Kill a Mockingbird. As it stands right now, it's June 1st, the readathon has started, and I am not off to a great start. But it's only the first day. I'm sure that I can do better tomorrow. It is Friday morning and I am kind of tired this morning because I got in at midnight and didn't go to bed right away. Of course, I got ready for bed and then I waited until my friend Roxanne texted me so I could make sure she got home all right. I had a fantastic time last night. We went to see To Kill a Mockingbird, and it was spectacular. And if you love this story, it's well worth seeing it on the stage. And the icing on the cake was I got to see Richard Thomas. And for those of you that don't know who Richard Thomas is, he played John Boy on the Waltons, and he was also the adult Bill in the original It miniseries. I want to catch you up on what reading I did get to this morning. First, I was able to read a couple of chapters in Welcome to Camp Nightmare. It's at the point where we have met all the characters. The narrator is Billy. They are on the bus going to the camp, and we meet Mike, who seems a little bit nervous, Jay and Colin, also a couple of the girls, Dawn and Dory. They are, bumping along, and then the bus driver stops and pretty much puts them out with their luggage on a platform. Well, then he just drives off. And of course, they have these little critters that are coming out of the woods. It seems like they're about to attack. And then who pulls up but Uncle Al, the camp counselor? He grabs all their things and puts them on the bus, and they're heading to the camp. The kids have some questions, and he's not answering those questions. So is he not answering them because he didn't hear them, or is he answering them because he doesn't want to answer those questions? Just adds to the weirdness. R.L. Stine always has some weird characters, And of course we have a little cryptic message from the mom early on where she tells Billy to do his best instead of just saying have a nice summer. And in R.L. Stine's typical fashion, every chapter ends with a dun dun dun, and then of course you go into the next chapter and there is some reasonable explanation for what's going on. But anyway, I'm enjoying it. I'm on chapter 5 and we'll just have to see what happens with poor Billy and his friends at this camp. As far as My Heart is a Chainsaw, I made it to chapter 2, got into a little bit of chapter 2, and I'm hooked already. I can't wait to read it. I really did think the first chapter with the young kids from the Netherlands out on that lake, I really thought this sounds like a movie, like a horror movie happening. And of course, by the end of the chapter, I'm expecting Jade, who is our main character, to like turn off the television. Well, that is not the case. Of course, in chapter 2, we do meet Jade and her terrible father and his awful friend Rexel. Kind of getting a gist of what Jade's life is like because she lives with her dad. Her parents are not together. Looking forward to learning more about her backstory and where this is going to go. But I'm hooked. I can't wait to read some more. Good morning and happy Saturday. I am on the road with my hubby and we are taking Luna Bell. She's in the back there. Luna Bell is going to the vet for her annual vaccinations, and she's none too pleased because she does not like riding in the car. I am only on page 26 of My Heart is a Chainsaw, so it's slow going, and it's not because the book is not enjoyable, it's just that I haven't had the time to really dig into it. But still character building, learning more about Jade, learning where she's working, and a little bit about what's going on in her town. As for my Goosebumps book, I am on chapter 9, and it really did start right out the gate with all kinds of spooky and mysterious happenings. The boys are now at the camp and they are trying to figure out what they have to do in their bunk. Of course, something bad happens to Mike in their cabin. I'm a little concerned because their camp counselor, Larry, doesn't seem too overly worried. Also, Uncle Al, who is the camp director, he seems a little oblivious about what's going on, or maybe not so much, but he's acting that way. However, he has given some strict warnings to the boys as far as not going out after 9 p.m., as well as not going into one of the cabins. They are strictly forbidden. Well, of course, when you say things like that, we're dealing with boys, and these boys are not going to stay in their cabin. They're going to go investigate. I did bring my Goosebumps book with me because Luna will have to go into the vet office by herself, and that's only because the vet's office is still being repaired from damage from Hurricane Ida. We're back home and Luna Bell did very well at the vet. She even cooperated with Dr. Davis to get her toenails clipped. So really proud of my girl. And she was a little more calm driving home than she was going to the vet, so that was a good thing. I did get some reading done, got a couple more chapters, and I'm telling you, this is the worst summer camp on the planet. Poor Billy and his group of cabin mates are not having a great time. Larry, the counselor, is horrible. In fact, I think there is something wrong with him. I have a feeling the reason why they're not supposed to be going out after, 9 o'clock is because these camp counselors probably turn into some kind of creature, because Billy observes how Larry acts when they're playing scratch ball, and that little slight change just made Billy really kind of concerned. So we're also losing some of our campers. Billy really seems alone. I mean, I just really kind of feel bad for him, because here you're supposed to be relying on adults, and the adults are the ones you have to be afraid of.
My witch may have a beer and a broom. The witch's brew. I love that, Kat. That's wonderful. Yeah, I want a beer for mine too. And of course, the beer is one of the hardest ones to earn, because I wanted the most absurd little things for the corns to hold to be the hardest things to earn. I think that's under the one where it says no red on the cover, which is very, very hard.
Hey everyone, it's Saturday evening and I am about to go eat dinner. I caught up. I am up to page 110, which is where I needed to be today on day 3. And that's all thanks to Kelsi, because she hosted sprints today on her Patreon, and that got me caught up. Woohoo! We know that the couple at Indian Lake, something terrible happened to them. Jade finds a piece of that puzzle, because unfortunately Jade ends up going to work, and then she kind of has a meltdown, and then she tries to harm herself. She ends up jumping in the same canoe that the couple was using that evening, that fatal, terrible evening. She goes out on the water because she tried to take her life. She is sent away to like a treatment place for about 7 or 8 weeks. Well, when she has all of her personal effects given back to her, there is the pink cell phone in a Ziploc bag that belonged to Sven. She knows that it's not hers. She is able to end up unlocking it with the help of her dad's scuzzy friend, Rexel. She watches what's on there. She sees that something terrible has happened. She's like, okay, there is something going on. Prior to that, she has met a new girl in town called Letha. Letha and her family live in Terra Nova in one of the new big fancy houses. They talk in the bathroom. Letha introduces herself. Jade introduces herself. And immediately Jade thinks she is a classic final girl. Now, Jade is very, very knowledgeable of slasher films. She's an expert, basically. And that's one thing I really am loving about this book is there's so many references to slasher movies. And quite a few of them I have seen. So I totally understand what's going on when she makes references to them or to the characters in those movies. The ones that I don't know, I am keeping a list because I want to check these movies out. Something happens one evening because she is having to do some community service as part of her trying to hurt herself. She ended up taking town property, which is the canoe, and so she's got to do some community service for that. She discovers that they're having a party and Letha is attending that party. So she's kind of spying on them from like a wooded area, and she sees Letha discover something in the lake, and it's terrible. Right when Jade sees this discovery, she is convinced that there is a slasher in the area and there is going to be some killing taking place. So because of this, she decides she needs to warn Letha. So she writes Letha a letter. She explains why she's thinking all of this and includes some of the papers that she has written on slasher films. She's written these papers for her class for Mr. Holmes. I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go from here. However, I'm really enjoying Stephen Graham Jones's writing. I love all the references to the slasher movies. I really like the character of Jade. She's very flawed and complicated, but I like her. She's also strong. She's resilient. It's going to be interesting the part she plays and how she and Letha are going to come out of this whole entire ordeal. It starts off kind of like a slow burn, which I'm okay with a slow burn because I really do feel this is going to build up and it's going to pick up the pace and we're going to have a really good story by the end of the book. So I'm okay with putting in the time with the slow burn because it looks like this is where it's going to start picking up. Anyhow, see y'all soon. Hey everyone, it's Sunday afternoon and I finished Welcome to Camp Nightmare and it was awesome. I have to honestly say this is my first 5-star Goosebumps book because incredible. Just was not expecting the twists and turns, and you cannot judge this book by its cover because I really thought there was going to be some kind of a creature that was going to pop out of those woods, or Larry, the counselor who was just so annoying, was going to turn into some kind of werewolf, and that's what was happening to some of the campers that were missing. Totally blown away. I cannot really go into any more details because I don't want to spoil this. I really do think this is one of the darkest Goosebumps books that I have read so far. Ghost Beach is pretty creepy, but this is like dark. I mean, there was a point in there that I'm like, I don't know if R.L. Stine should have been writing about this kind of stuff. However, it all made sense when you get to the end, and oh my goodness, what an ending. What a twist. Fantastic book. One of the things that I like about these Goosebumps books, and I'm not 100% sure if they had these extra pages in the back of the books that my son had when he was growing up. We don't have those books any longer, so there's no way for me to check. The ones that are included in a few of my books that I have, I think are fantastic because they're a lot of fun. There's a section back here about R.L. Stine. There's some questions that they ask him. For example, if you had to choose one, which would you rather be bitten by, a bear or a snake? And R.L. Stine said, too late. late, I was already bitten by a vampire. I just think kids would get a kick out of it. I got a kick out of it, so I'm sure kids get a kick out of it. There's also top 10 reasons to be happy your camp is haunted. And some of them are just funny, like, okay, that was interesting. Apparently, we're like, welcome to Camp Country. I don't know. We've got two girls riding around on a golf cart, and a dog came out, and they got all freaked out because the dog was running alongside the golf cart. I don't know. Teenagers, what can I say? Anyway, what I was saying is that these top 10 reasons to be happy your camp is haunted, some of them are really cute. For example, since the camp counselors only come out at night, you're free to do whatever you want during the day. Also, the haunted bands that play in the abandoned theater are amazing. Then there's a section called Venomous Snake Stats. And what's great about this is that it gives you all kinds of facts about snakes, different type of snakes, but also I learned something. I didn't realize that you should not refer to snakes as poisonous and non-poisonous. Snakes are venomous or non-venomous because poison is breathed, eaten, or absorbed through the skin. Venom is injected. Now go impress your science teacher with that bit of knowledge. That is what's in this book, and I just think that is awesome. Also, there's a section where you can create a creepy camp schedule, and they're really great. Like, there is a schedule for Camp Bloodstone, and it starts off like 7:45 in the morning, screaming banshees wake up all campers. And for zombie lovers like myself, at 4 o'clock, from 4 to 5:30, you can participate in zombie archery. But I think it's a lot of fun because they give you some tips on how to create the schedule with all kinds of play on words. I really did enjoy this book, and I hope that anyone who likes Goosebumps, if you have not read Welcome to Camp Nightmare, I would highly recommend reading this one because it's my first 5-star Goosebumps book. I really did think it was a lot of fun. We are in New Orleans, and we are walking to the Smoothie King to see Duran Duran live. Woo! Happy Friday, everyone. I know it's been a hot minute since I've updated you. Some unexpected things came up, as well as my husband and I going out of town and spending the night in New Orleans overnight so that we could see Duran Duran in concert, which was amazing. I started and finished a novella. The story I chose was Dolly by Susan Hill, and it is a novella in my The Woman in Black and Other Ghost Stories collection, and I liked it. It was creepy. However, I wouldn't really consider it a ghost story. I would say it is more of a creepy doll story with some supernatural elements, perhaps. We have our narrator, Edward Cayley. He is our main character of this story. He is going back to the home called It House where his Aunt Kestrel lived. He is to meet his cousin Leonora there. They are to actually meet with Aunt Kestrel's lawyer to hear the reading of her will. While he's there, he stops at the house first, and it kind of triggers some memories for him of the summer that he and Leonora stayed with Aunt Kestrel for the first time. They were not all pleasant memories because Edward, who was shy and introverted, really quiet, and didn't ever want to make waves, and really complied with whatever adults wanted, he was very easygoing. Leonora, on the other hand, was very haughty, very hard to get along with, high maintenance, expected a lot, just had that entitlement. And it's basically how they were raised. Leonora's mother and Edward's mother were sisters, Aunt Kestrel's sisters, but they never did get along. They hated each other. So this was the first time that Edward and Leonora were meeting. While they're there, Leonora has a birthday, and she ends up receiving all kinds of gifts from her mom that her mom had sent to her. However, she's very upset because she didn't get the one gift that she wanted, and that was a beautiful doll. So she's depressed and she's sad. So Aunt Kestrel decides that she's going to go to the city and she's going to find her a beautiful doll. So when she comes home and she presents Leonora with the doll, Leonora is so ungrateful. She is in a rage, and she takes the doll and she smashes it against the fireplace, and it gets a huge crack on the side of its head, and shards are all over the place. She runs upstairs and she's so angry and just horrible, like just had a horrible temper tantrum. Edward picks up the pieces and puts the doll back into the box, while Aunt Kestrel is very upset. It hurt her feelings greatly because she was trying to do something very nice for Leonora. Edward brings the doll up to his bedroom and he goes to sleep. However, he can't really sleep very well because he keeps hearing tissue paper rustling, and he knows that it's coming from the box. So he takes the box and he finally decides to run to the cemetery and bury the doll. Well, let's go back to where the beginning of the story started, and they go to the lawyer's office, and he reveals that Aunt Kestrel has left everything to Edward, and the only thing that she has left to Leonora is the doll that she didn't want, and she hopes that maybe seeing the doll will make her appreciate people and be a kinder person. Well, that enrages Leonora even more, and even though she's an adult, she has a full-blown temper tantrum and storms out. Well, of course, Edward is not going to leave her high and dry because he's just not that type of person. Years go on. They don't ever really sell the house. It just kind of sits there, and occasionally Edward will go back and check on it. Well, because of Leonora's horrible actions, both Edward and Leonora are affected in their adult lives. They have tragedy, and it's horrible because at one point, I think it's when they go to the lawyer to see the lawyer, they dig up that doll, and what is revealed when they bring the doll back to the house is horrific, extremely scary. I myself would have done something different with the doll than what Edward does with it. They are just going to put it past them. They're going to go their separate ways, and Edward rarely hears from Leonora until one day. I just have to say that it was all creepy. Susan Hill has a great way of writing a very atmospheric, gothic elements when it comes to the setting. You have a big, huge, creepy home that's old and kind of decaying over time. You've got the fens, which is like peat forming marshland. It's isolated, the house. In this countryside, it's gloomy. The weather plays a major role because it's always raining, and sometimes they have these violent thunderstorms, or the wind is constantly blowing. So very creepy in that aspect. I really wanted to know, how did the dolls get the way they did? Because there are two dolls. Edward ends up finding a doll later on in the story, and I don't want to go into details because I want to give away any spoilers, but they don't ever really explain it. So I guess in my mind, I'm thinking, was it spiritual retribution for what Leonora did to the doll that Aunt Kestrel gave her? Was there so much animosity and malice that came from Leonora that it somehow created some kind of supernatural energy that then transferred to the doll so that the doll did what it did? I'm not really sure about that. I guess that's the spin I'll put on it. I did not like the ending at all because I kind of felt like Edward was being punished for something that Leonora did. And so I didn't really care for that because Edward was not a bad person. Edward didn't deserve to have the tragedy that ends up happening with him and his family. I will say I did like the setting very much. The creepy doll element made it spooky, except for the ending and the fact that I don't really know why the dolls are the way they are. I did give it a 4-star, but I would recommend reading it. It wasn't as great as The Woman in Black, but The Woman in Black is one of my personal favorites. It's extremely well done. But I just was a little sad about what ends up happening to Edward. I was kind of sad for what happens to Leonora also, but I would think most people think she probably deserved what she got because of being such a shallow and horrible person for most of her life. Although I will have to say she was the way she was because of how she was raised by her mother. And unfortunately, it was so ingrained in her that not even someone as sweet as Edward or Aunt Kestrel could change the bitterness that was so really deep in her bones and in her soul. But that is what I ended up reading, and because I read Dolly, I got my broom for my witch candy corn. Now let's talk about My Heart is a Chainsaw. I have made it to page 262, still loving it. I think I have about 150 pages to go and I'll be finished. Letha ends up finding the materials and contacts Jade, and Jade's like, okay, good, she seems open to this. However, Letha ends up alerting Sheriff Hardy as well as Mr. Holmes, and they almost try to set up some kind of intervention because Letha thinks that Jade is doing all of this because it's a cry for help. Letha wants to help her. She wants to be that friend that's going to help her. And Jade is so irritated because that is totally not what this is about. Like, Jade is 100% positive that they are about to have some really horrible killings happen. Well, since their discovery of the Sven guy, the Netherlands guy in the water, there's also been another murder that happens to do with the founders of Terra Nova. Another really gruesome incident happens, but they're chalking it up to accident. Lo and behold, guess who's finding all of these bodies? Letha is. Jade does believe that Letha is the final girl. But then she starts thinking of all these scenarios of who else it could be, because most slashers that she's talking about are wearing some kind of a mask. You know, she's bringing up Michael Myers, she's bringing up Freddy Krueger, she's bringing up Jason Voorhees. Someone in this town is wearing a mask, whether it is literally they're wearing a mask or metaphorically they're wearing a mask. But Jade is just trying so hard to get people to believe her, and no one is really buying what she's selling. We're getting closer to the 4th of July. We're having more bodies turning up in grisly ways. Unfortunately, we're almost starting to think people that we thought are good people, it's almost putting that, suspicion on them as well. What I also love is that in one of the papers that she writes to Mr. Holmes, she talks about Stephen King, and she also talks about Agatha Christie and the whole bringing in the red herrings, because I'm going to tell you what, Agatha Christie can really write some great red herrings. And that's where you start thinking, maybe these people who we think are so awesome, and because they're in the positions they're in, they couldn't possibly do any harm. But if somebody has motive enough, or if they're seeking revenge, they could end up losing their mind and taking matters into their own hands. And it may just include a weapon that might do some slashing. Before I sign off for today, I do want to mention that I am reading another novella out of my Susan Hill collection of ghost stories, and the story that I will be starting either tonight or tomorrow is The Man in the Picture. And the reason I'm reading that novella is because my witch needs something else in her other hand. She's going to have a broom in one hand, and she's going to get a beer in her other hand. You know, witches, they drink witch's brew. Beer is brewed. So I think it would be perfect for my candy corn witch to have herself some beer. Well, it is Sunday, June 11th, which is the final day of the Slasher Readathon, and I finished My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I finished it this morning, and wow, it was fantastic. It really was fantastic. I have to say, there were so many things that I loved about this book. First of all, this is an homage to horror movies, specifically slasher movies. It's a celebration of slashers told through the eyes of Jade, through her love of slashers, her love of horror movies. Even though Jade is broken, she's very resilient, very tough, and I'm so happy that she is able to do what she needs to do to be a survivor, even though when you read the ending, you're not really quite sure where she's going to end up, because some things take place that kind of put her in a precarious spot. So it will be interesting to see what happens in the sequel, which is called Don't Fear the Reaper. And it is already out, and I'm excited because I plan to read that pretty soon, because I need to know. So some of the things that I loved about the book, apparently, Jade. That should be quite obvious. Every time I've updated, I've told y'all how much I love Jade. I just think she's wonderful, flaws and all. I love the movie references, the slasher movie references. So many of them I have seen, so many references without even using titles, but you know exactly what Jones is talking about. And then tons of movies that I had not even heard of before, which I'm making my list, and I can't wait to see how many end up on the list for me to watch in the future. I kind of felt like I was watching a slasher movie unfold, which I think is awesome that Jones could capture that in written form. He kept you guessing until the bittersweet end, because towards the end, when it starts getting crazy and brutal and twists and turns and answers and secrets are all coming out. It is crazy there for many, many pages. It's bittersweet. It's bittersweet because it's not an ending that was tied up with a nice, neat little bow. I will say that Jade's relationship with her father comes to light. You learn a little more about why their relationship is their relationship. It's literally spelled out. We understand a little more of Letha hearing that kind of cry for help, even though that wasn't necessarily the intention of Jade. Or was it? I don't know. I do like that there were people in the community who stepped up for Jade, even though Jade felt like such an outcast and felt like people didn't really take her seriously because she happened to be a girl who loved horror films. That's just so strange, but I understand that because I don't have tons of friends that are horror fans personally that I hang out with. I mean, I have a lot of friends, that I've made on BookTube that like horror. And so that's what's so nice and awesome about having a community that does, because you have people to talk about when you're watching these movies or reading these stories. I do think there is a scene towards the end with the mama bear and the cub that really was beautiful. I thought that was just a really beautiful scene that Stephen Graham Jones wrote, and loved it. Now, I will say lots of positives about the book. I love the book. However, I do think it was a little bit long. I think there were parts that could have been shorter, and I think we could have gotten to the reveal or the climax or whatever a little bit faster. I just felt like it was that dangling carrot. It's like, okay, come on, let's go. What's going to happen? But once we get the reveal, holy cow. Holy cow, that's all I can say. It was crazy, bonkers from that point on. I will say I did have a little bit of confusion when it came to the character of Theo Mondragon and his relationship with the construction workers, especially a scene with shooting glasses. It never really is explained. And then also I have questions about Sheriff Hardy also that it's not really spelled out. I mean, I have like my suspicions, but I don't really understand. I don't understand why it would be the way it is. I just don't want to go into details because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who has not read the book. However, if you have read My Heart is a Chainsaw, you may have those answers, and maybe you can, I don't know, clue me in, not so much in the comments, but maybe send me a, private message or something, because I don't know, I'm a little stumped with that. It would be nice to be able to talk to somebody about it and just say, can you clear this up for me a little bit? Also, the ending left me with questions. I guess part of that is if I would have read this without knowing that there is a sequel, those questions would probably haunt me, because I'm hoping that there is going to be some clarification, because the ending is kind of abrupt. You're kind of left there like last scene, and it's not wrapped up the way you would think it would be. So I don't know about the well-being of some of the characters in the story, and I want to know. I really want to know. So that's why I'm saying I need to get the sequel sometime soon so that I can dive right in. Apparently, this whole series, it's going to be a trilogy. So apparently there's going to be another book after Don't Fear the Reaper. But overall, 4-star read for me, solid 4-star, and I really enjoyed it. And if you haven't checked it out and you like these type of books, I would highly recommend it. I have 2 more prompts to fulfill before the readathon ends for me this evening. And the first is, I started my last story, which is The Man in the Picture, and that is another story by Susan Hill. It's a novella, and it is included in my collection, The Woman in Black and Other Ghost Stories. I am enjoying it so far. It is about a man named Oliver. He is actually our narrator, and he is visiting his old professor in Cambridge. And as they're having conversation one evening, the professor wants to tell Oliver a story. It has to do with a mysterious painting that is hanging on one of his walls in his home. There is some creepy undertones so far. I am curious to see what happens in the rest of the story. Susan Hill is very good about setting a very creepy atmosphere. Also, Kelsi is hosting a watch party this evening, and she is going to be showing Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2, which I have never seen, and I'm excited to attend that this evening. And once I'm finished with The Man in the Picture and Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2, I will be officially finished with the Kilocorn Readathon. Hey everyone, it's Tuesday afternoon and I'm in my backyard hanging out with my dogs. I forgot to update you on completing the Kilocorn Readathon. I finished the Readathon on Sunday. I finished the story, The Man in the Picture by Susan Hill, Sunday afternoon. It was really creepy and eerie. It's a story within a story. It's about revenge. It's about love and loss and tragedy. It was really good, I must say. I'm kind of teetering between a 4 and 5 star. Not really sure. Because is it as good as The Woman in Black? I think it's better than Dolly. And I gave Dolly a 4 star. So maybe a 4.5 star would probably be the best rating for it, I would think. Anyhow, Oliver is with his professor, Dr. Theo Parmenter, at Dr. Parmenter's apartment in Cambridge. And they're having a nice evening, and Theo decides that he wants to unload a burden that has to do with a mysterious painting that he has owned for many years. And Oliver is happy to comply. So Theo goes back in time as to when he purchased the painting, how he was approached by someone who was late in getting there to outbid him, but Theo didn't want to sell the painting to him because he liked it and he knew a little bit about paintings and art and really wanted it as part of his collection. Time goes on and Theo is interviewed in a newspaper or a magazine, and the picture, the painting, is in the background. He is contacted shortly after by a Countess Hawdon who would like to speak with him concerning this painting. Well, he goes to her home, and it's a very old home, very eerie. Susan Hill does really great with describing old homes that are huge and very ornate and has things in the shadows. really, really good at that. He finally meets with the Countess and they have dinner, and she explains why she wants this painting. It has to do with a tragedy that befalls her family and concerns her husband. He refuses, and she pretty much tells him that she's not going to rest if she doesn't have the painting, and he's not going to rest either. Fast forward into the present time where he and Oliver are continuing this conversation, and it just sounds so mysterious, and Oliver is feeling a little uneasy about it. Well, his professor ends up dying in the middle of the night, and it really does upset Oliver a great deal. He happens to be the one that finds the professor dead, and kind of close to where he's at is the painting that fell off the wall. But what's weird about it is the wire that held it wasn't broken. There was just mysterious circumstances as to why. Well, he checks the painting, and it has something to do with the story, and I don't want to give any spoilers, so I'm not, and seems a little bit relieved, and then he goes about his business. In the meantime, he and Anne, his fiancée, are planning to get married. Oliver feels like, since this happened with his professor, that he really wants to push the marriage forward, so he does. And where does his bride want to go honeymoon? In Venice, which that was a really pivotal point in the Countess's story as to the tragedy that befalls her and her husband. That's all I can say, really, because I don't want to give anything else away. It ends very sadly. I don't know, I've kind of noticed something about the 3 stories that I've read by Susan Hill in this collection so far, and I'm starting to see a pattern of sorts. When I finish the entire collection, I have 2 more stories in it. I think I'm going to make some comparisons between the whole collection, all the stories in the collection, and kind of give my thoughts overall. But I will say, after talking to you about it, I really do think it's a 4.5. Better than Dolly, but not quite the caliber of The Woman in Black. The last thing I needed to do for the Killer Corn Readathon was watch a slasher film. So that's what I did. On Sunday night, Kelsi hosted Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2 on her Discord. And all I can say is it was awful. It is nothing like Prom Night that stars the fabulous Jamie Lee Curtis. This was a prom queen from the 50s who ends up dying tragically and then somehow possesses a girl from the 80s, and there's just like a whole bunch of crazy, awful stuff that happens, things that I didn't really want to ever see in my lifetime, especially the thing that happens with this hobby horse that's in this teenage girl's bedroom. Anyhow, it doesn't matter because I earned my Ninja Star for my Corn on the Cob, so I'm excited about that. I did give it a half star, and it earned it because at least Michael Ironside was in it, and also they had some great 80s fashion. Otherwise, not my cup of tea. But it was a fun time to watch with everyone. I would probably not have watched the whole movie had I been alone. Phew, what an adventure. I had so much fun reading for this Killer Corn Slashathon because at the end of the day, well really actually at the end of the readathon, I got my 2 killer corns, and so I want to share those with you really quickly. My first corn is a candy corn, and I ended up getting a witch. Look how cute she is. She has a cute little hat. She has glasses like me. In one hand, she carries her broom, which of course is her mode of transportation. And in the other hand, she has her beer. You know, she has her witch's brew. And if you notice, she does have a little bitty mole on her face. I am super excited about my witch. But we can't stop there because I also got myself another little slasher corn, And this was a corn on the cob. Look how cute my little cat corn on the cob is. My cat, that is a mask obviously, that disguises my corn on the cob, and beanie hat, one hand, because cats are so stealthy, she's carrying her ninja star, and in the other hand, she has her water gun. So I am so excited, not only about my witch candy corn, but also about my cat, corn on the cob. This was a fantastic readathon. Thank you so much, Kelsi, for hosting it and for creating our corny slashers. I love them so much. Well, folks, that is all I have for you today. I really do appreciate you stopping by and sticking with me through this vlog and everything I thought about all the wonderful stories that I read. In the meantime, stay amazing and be adventurous.